I think wanting just to point through some of the
Yeah. So.
I think
You want what?
Walk through.
Red wine.
Because I didn't really want me to.
I don't want you to say you didn't read that.
maybe questions on some of the elements to just get confirmation on the direction forward, not in this one.
Because I
but-
felt that actually, sorry, I was left with wanting a little different.
So we'll talk, yeah, we need to talk about
Should we, we'll start with the first one and then I think when we get to the, well, let's look at how it was.
I think I want to make sure there's a quarter row going on now.
That's why I wanted you to be able to talk, you know, I can probably move through.
As long as we can get, as long as we get the meeting there. I don't want it to be presented at half an hour. And we
No,
have
no,
two-
no.
And I know you've got it there, but we've got a few of those, so
Okay.
as long as we get that done.
We have started.
Okay, so hang on, I'll just, Kathy's here. Kat? Just a question. Okay, welcome to the park team. First item on the agenda for our workshop, the stage 4 jetty replacement. Floor is Stefan, good to see you. Dave, Brianna, floor is yours.
Oh, hi, Simon. I'm just going to do a little quick scene setter, just for me. So today, you'll see that we've brought 3 papers. They're independent papers, but we've purposely brought them to you because obviously they're interrelated. You guys can actually probably see that. Okay, so it's important that you understand the whole context. Just a couple of things before we step into it. Firstly, with these type of projects, for 2 of them, the jetty and stage 6, I'm just going to be upfront. Scope creep is a real risk here. Okay, good. Scope creep starts incrementally. Okay, either now or when we start delivering. So it's really important that we refine what our scope is and make sure that we're on the same page of what we're delivering. Okay, it's a real thing. So what we're really looking for today is we're looking to confirm some scope and really kind of narrow that down. That's what Brun's going to talk about in a minute. And so what can often happen when we have those discussions is you can tell us what you don't like, but what we're really asking for is what you want to see. Okay. The last thing is myself and Brian will need to step out somewhere in here because we're about to catch a plane and we need to get away by about 12. So we'll probably leave the last item to Matt over there. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian and Stefan, they can lead away.
Okay. Good day, everyone. Stephen and I will just talk through this. As we said, we'll just sort of move through some of the slides. So the purpose is to seek direction on the replacement of the Wānaka Lakefront Stage 4 jetty and Rose Bay Reserve. And so just a bit of background there. The existing jetty is at the end of life, and I think you've just had a workshop on this recently, so I won't go into all the detail on this. But our proposal today is to look at an opportunity to bring some budget forward in the LTP to replace, I guess, a like-for-like jetty down in a new location within Rose Bay. So, Stefan, we can talk to some of the elements of what we're proposing in the jetty replacement, and I think that's what we were asked to come back to the board with, what that might look like.
So aren't we we're not using any budget? We're saying we're going to.
We're using the asset sales reserve
Yeah.
for the, but that has to come out of the budget. Like it's still budgeted, but it's not coming out from rates. It's, yeah. I'm going to be really careful not to torpedo, but it might say something. I'm really underwhelmed with the proposal that's been put forward. So to interrogate to the nth degree for a piece of community infrastructure that looks like it was designed by an engineer that had no creativity is really soul destroying for me. And it's possibly on the back of the fact that there was some work done by another landscape or a community facility architect that presented what could happen now. That had a lot of Te Ao Māori behind it. It had some real placemaking around it. It were really, I talked about before in the meeting, the jewel of the crown, you know, pulling people down to the lake. What's been presented, the like for like, doesn't work for me now. I'm sorry I'm saying this now, but if you're going to go and sort of say, look, it's rectangle and it's like this and it's like that, I'm just wondering whether we need to pull it back up and say, are we aligned around this actually having some creative aspect to it, actually having some visual appeal, actually telling a story, or are we wanting a functional, kids can jump off it, climb up the ladder, jump up it again, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like.
I think that's what we wanted direction from today, and present we were looking within in our current budgets, and that's where this is what we can afford. If we do want something more creative, it does come with a higher price attached to it, and I think that's where if we get direction with what can fit within the budget that we've got.
Yeah, so we need to say thank you for Nicola raising. What's this budget? What budget are you talking about?
So the budget that we were working from was the Ely Point budget that we wanted to bring forward to deliver the.
It's been well signalled since October that the Wānaka Asset Sales Reserve, this was a key project of it. Now, I'm not saying that it makes it gold-plated and limitless, but this was never a piece of infrastructure that was going to be limited by renewals budget.
And that's something that we want to understand so that we can take that away from this workshop. So now that we understand that you know, like.
So but I'm reflecting I'm reflecting what's been in the
direction
papers.
Like on, I think, slide, if we come, there's just a couple of elements we do want to discuss with you. But where we've got this proposal here, which it's moved in location, but is a very similar structure. If that's not the direction that you want to take, then we can look to move to something more, as you said, working with iwi and having a cultural narrative and understanding whether or not we can have some more design elements in there. We can do that, understanding the budget available within, and that's where parks can come in and partner with property to look at how it can be something more than just, I guess, like blight.
I'm going to throw this open to the team.
Yeah.
Hang on. Good.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to present this or not, like in terms of the designs that you've done, because I feel like we have conversations.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, you know, whenever it was, I can't remember the timing. 18 months ago, I was approached by a local firm who just wanted to, you know, do something in the community, and in some ways it was, you know, an opportunity for them to reach out and, you know, make themselves known in this community as well. But they did a piece of design work, as I said, just around what are the options or, you know, themes that you can follow around here. And, you know, I've circulated those, and they've been in the Wānaka app previously. And there were four, and I'm not saying we have to choose from the four that are put there, but they provide an opportunity for us to say, well, what are the design elements we want to take from that, or what are the choices we want to make? Now, we're all very aware of cost here, so we're not going to go the
Full Monty.
Yeah, the full Monty, but there are design leads that we can take that aren't going to add a huge amount of costs. They're going to tie in really well. Now, you know, there's a couple of key considerations here, you know, as people have said, that how people use it, which includes, I mean, a jetty predominantly is to access the water for boats. So we need to make some provision for, you know, a boat to pull alongside, and we need to consider what that means. We also know that people really connect in terms of jumping off it, and you know, that narrative's been well explained. So we want to, and the tourists go there and they want to be able to walk out there and maybe understand a little bit about the eels, about Wānaka, about you know, the iwi connections to the mountains, and you know, all that sort of stuff. There's a little bit of interpretation there that could be done through the structure. Once again, just going back to that point around the pathway, you know, this has been well traversed. We know that a future jetty would likely line up with Howick Street. That's a key theme. We know that the pathway needs to be there, and you know, we don't need to overcomplicate it, but they're blocking features of the stage 4. You know, they're two bits that aren't really going to change very much, and that's why we've been comfortable they could proceed. And I'll just speak to one other point, that alongside the you know, the just pure engineering, which need to understand the function, the existing level's not right of the current jetty, and I've signalled that already, that we got the levels right on the boardwalk, and I want to know what level that is, because that needs to carry through here, and that will inform some of the design decisions we make here as well.
So did you want to?
Yeah, I'll jump on from the back of that.
Yeah. Thanks for setting that scene, because there is the.
Sure. It's the toki is sort of what we come to. This is the design that was
Sure. Is that the second one? Yeah, I love it.
So when I saw that, it was, I think everybody I've talked to who's seen it was like, that is visionary. That is like the heart, that's where the land meets the water, that sort of shows our cultural identity and celebrates Te Ao Māori, and it feels like a massive vision piece. And I think this community is probably desperate for something that really represents them and creates some meaningful step forward. And I think a lot of the intention with us trying to prioritize this jetty is to do something meaningful in the context of, you know, austerity that we're at. We get that the cost of living and everything else, this is a way that we can put something that's quite aspirational but cost effective, that has, I think, the personality, humanity, it culminates into something that's far more than the practical, you know, like for like jetty thing. And I think the intention of doing this now is to do something for the next 50, 100 years that really puts identity into this place. So I guess when I think of the jetty, this is what I think of. And that's where I feel like it's a lot of people are socialized around, and that's the value of why we're putting resources into this, I think. It's far more than just a practical thing. It's traverses so many different.
Sure.
Anyway,
Did you want to? And then Nikki, get in.
Go ahead, Nikki, because I'm going to formulate my question. I've got a couple questions.
Yes, I'll go ahead with a relatively unformulated comment. I guess I'd like to see two options costed. I think something like this is an option one, as in a more basic, you know, what does that cost? Because I think we need to have comparisons.
What doesn't it cost what they've done? That's the point.
Yeah,
Oh, in
approximately
terms of
the 800 to
Yeah.
1.3, and
Yeah.
within that,
Yeah.
and that's not.
But in terms of
just-
taking it forward and, I mean, do we have to decide now on whether we want something more expensive? It'd be good to have options at any point when it comes to a decision making. That, I guess that's what I'm saying, but yeah, I love the design of the Clutha. I think that looks great, but everything comes down to cost, right? So that's going to be really important, because the other way of looking at it is you can go for this thing that's the centerpiece, or you can just retain this relaxed lakefront vibe with the old school look, and that has value as well. Sometimes we get really hung up on these, this is not just my personal view, but on these amazing designs, and somehow it will make the space so much better. But sometimes just chill and relaxed and old fashioned and kind of take you back to when you were a kid, that kind of less, what's the word, gentrified environment actually delivers an experience as well. That's important. And I'm really torn, because that's my preference. I don't know what this community wants, and I'd like to hear, but I'd like to see, you know, that vibe that old school jetty creates has value for people as well.
Thank you, Nikki. That's actually a great example of the direction we're asked for. Do you want us to kind of stick with something a bit more contemporary, which kind of is that we wanting something a little bit more talky? So that's what the bit of direction.
Yeah.
I'd love to respond just in terms of.
I love the cultural aesthetic that comes into that, and I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have that, and I don't know how Ian would want to be involved in that. I'm just thinking, you know, what do we turn our places into? We've done it with Queenstown, and somehow this gold plating and making it, and I'm not saying it's gold plated, but just always upping the ante doesn't necessarily deliver what people want and need. That. So yeah, I'd like to see two options. I'd also like to see that stage 4 done in a cohesive way. So if we do the jetty, then we do half, and then we do the rest of it, and then Hellwick Street or piecemeal. I don't know that we're going to get something that feels right. And I don't know what right is for this community. People need to, and that's the big bit of this, is that we need community engagement. It shouldn't be us sitting around this table going, oh, we want this. It's got to be the community informing us so that we can go, this is what the community wants.
Yeah. I feel like you can contextualize this, because all my work before getting to council was building a community vision. And when I went and showed signs out to the community, they all said, where's the iwi in it? Where's this sort of like cultural heritage that we want to celebrate? Because we're massively underserved. We're this we don't celebrate that enough. And that's well recognized. And I think we need to do things that are, you know, reflecting our values of who we are as a society. This isn't like this is still a very practical wall.
Yeah.
There's a very small amount of it that, you know, it's a slight taper to
You don't
reference
see
it.
the talking much. When you walk up to it, you
Yeah,
won't
but it's
necessarily
the
see
fact of
that.
just putting rope across that you just are reminded by it and it signifies it. And it was really important for the community. That was all the feedback, the majority of that I got from the signs that I had to reflect. And then I tried to go to iwi and I tried to go to Manawhenua and we tried to co-design it. The reality was that, you know, not everybody's a designer and it's really hard for them to try and come up with good ideas together because they're all stretched on 30 other things as well. So the point is that like we have to, you know, really take leadership and then bring people on the same boat, walker, whatever, on this. And I think this just speaks so like eloquently and directly at I think what this whole district has missed for so many years. So
So just to take a step back, I hear what you're saying. You want direction, and I think you want that direction about functionally as well as sort of right?
Maybe?
So, and to give context for that, I also step back to when so the Lakefront Development Plan itself had quite an extensive engagement process. And just kind of responding to some of your issues you've raised, Nikki. I mean, I personally facilitated engagement with the high school students around Lakefront Development Plan when it was first being put together, and that involved blank pieces of paper and lots of fantastic ideas. One of the biggest themes coming out of that was the jetty, you know, because it is really important to kids. And I would suggest to you that kids are open to all sorts of design, and more than anything, they want functionality out of it, but would very much appreciate, particularly in these days, something that speaks to them and speaks to the world we live in and this place and what's unique about this place. And for me, a lot of the designs that Cody's talking about certainly fit that. Also really aware that, you know, there's a governance management sort of divide here in terms of level we get to in terms of dictating design. I am wondering whether or not you took into consideration this the pro bono piece that came out of this other designer in your thinking. When you clearly engaged a particular firm to come up with the design you've got, but you must have been aware of this one floating around. Okay, right. Edo.
No, that has not come across as a part of what we're doing now. It's very much a functional replacement of the assets, hearing what we want to be, what meaning and how we're looking at the replacement of a like that is obviously now what we're here to get the direction of.
Yeah.
Is it the talkie direction or the
I'm really surprised about that.
It hasn't gone through because I mean, I have given it through Ken and
Really?
Ken
Okay.
and I think.
Don't blame stuff. It's
Step
really
on as well.
nice.
Retaking my position, whatever here, I guess it's not one or the other. You know, a wharf is a function, you know, a jetty is a functional thing, first and foremost, but that it is, I mean, these are functional. It's not like they're not going to work. So I guess just not pitch them against each other in that sense. And you answered my question. Thank you. So that was really what I wanted to know, is whether or not that was taken into consideration. And I guess you're hearing perspectives today that says that there are some other creative ideas that we do want brought to the table. I also makes me think about what should be BAU in these sorts of things, and involvement from iwi should be, and I know is a big part of the work that you do. So when some of the comments around cultural narrative in here felt a little tokenistic, I have to say. So I guess I'm wondering again, what kind of conversations have been held so far and really should be held as this project continues, and making sure that those are meaningful and because we're talking about the federal here. And yeah, I guess that's where I can stop today. But I personally, again, and I am informed by what I know from community, both in the past and present, I'm certainly wanting to see a variety of options here above and beyond function. Let's call it the baseline, functional. But also, I mean, there's nothing to say that what's in here would cost more necessarily, because we don't know until we know.
Again, Chris.
I guess I feel for you guys in terms of what you think that you can deliver, and this is what we want. And I think we've had a long time to look at these alternative designs, shall we say, that and I think just to talk to what Nikki was saying, I think there's a chance here to do something that's not just like for like, that we should actually take a little bit more time and come up with something that is a little bit different. I was just saying to Brianna before, we've been talking about this, the lakefront, for 10 years. That's just the two of us. It's been going on longer than that. And I think in terms of as part of those 10 years, we have gone out to the community so many times about the various aspects that I believe that the group sitting around this table right here, right now, actually has the authority from the community to do what we think would look good and work well, and is more aspirational, shall we say, rather than a like-for-like replacement. And I fully support us going with something like that, and not even getting two options, just saying this is what you want it to look like, this is what it's going to cost, can we afford it? Great, let's do it.
So I'm hearing that you want something a bit more aesthetically.
Well, absolutely, we needed to tell a story. And I'm not sure why we're picked open function against aesthetics. I mean, this thing here blew it out of the water. It showed 20 years ago that you don't need to have function versus aesthetics. Well, you shouldn't even be pitting them against them. We shouldn't even be pitting cost against things. We should be looking at what is value for an intergenerational asset that at the heart of our community that is going to be there for the next 80, 100 years. I don't know. And the other thing is it was scoped really narrow. It's sort of saying that the jetty is there for people to dive off. Is not. The most memorable thing I have was when we had Aspiring Conversations or Festival of Colour the time before last, and we had that dance performance out on the jetty, which was absolutely incredible. We had the dancers in their red and stuff, the most photographed things, stuff like that. So it's a placemaking. It's not just, it was just scoped so narrow. Yes, there's people wanting to dive with it. Yes, there is people that wanting to use it as boats, but it's actually a heart. It's where people will gather. It's where people will reflect. People take photos. It's more than just a place for boats to be tied up to. And I'm not sure why we're not just taking and having to put it through the complicator. There is a really well thought through document that was done pro bono for the community that has alignment around, if you want gold plated, go to option 4 and see what that is. If you want gold plated, take what John Wellington said about creating Steamer Wharf down there and having a pier that's got commercial and bloody casinos and stuff down there. If you want gold plated, it's gold plated. Putting something with a taper in it and giving rooting it deeply in some and very important cultural perspective is not gold plated. It's not gold plated. It is basically creating infrastructure that tells a story and reflects our community.
But we get it, Simon, and we don't need it told in that tone and manner. We get it.
Exactly.
Okay. What we're just asking for is some feedback. Okay. It can be done. You can just let us know. We can go away and think about it.
That's what they're asking for. It's not as though they've done something wrong.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, look, you guys you've expressed it pretty clearly to us, and we're taking it on board.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're just quite passionate about.
We're really
More
passionate
than anything,
about
I don't want to read
we're just as passionate,
Yeah.
but I'm letting you know we don't need to be told in that tone and manner.
Okay, I apologise for that tone.
Thank you, Simon.
I apologise to Dave. You know that's not my style, but so I apologise.
Yeah, thank you.
There are 2 documents that are really, really important that it is unfortunate that they haven't been shared. And that is one, a piece of work that was done 18 months ago that sort of set the scene and basically curated how we feel about the jetty. And the second thing is a Wānaka asset sales reserve that for the last 6 months has been identified as where the jetty has been well identified as a piece of community infrastructure that would take pride in place in an asset reserve investment.
So we're really looking for it. So we're getting a bit of a sense you wanted to do something a bit more architecturally driven, you know, so it makes a statement. but maybe not option four.
Design.
Option four.
Designed.
So, so we're getting that. We can go away and have a think about that. And we can think about how we might progress that request, because it's going to put some different timelines on us there.
Yeah.
And we've got council constraints with procurement and things like that.
I mean, there's, just given the context, there's an opportunity to, we've often talked about different types of engagement and different types of things. There's an opportunity to do something a little bit different here. And I mean, at one stage I envisaged that this could actually be a design competition, for instance, and we could actually, or that we could put something out to market and say, come up with some really interesting designs based around a scope that we're trying to achieve. Now, we're sort of in an interesting place because we've already got part of that, and we've already got some, our own direction. But, I think some sort of engagement where, people can give input and engagement on what is really important to them and what are the things and that we want to come out of it. Just in terms of money, I don't want to get too tied up in the, I think firstly we need to decide what we're trying to achieve and, come up with, and then the money falls out of that, and then we make some decisions around the money. Now, there's some opportunities here because it's been expressed really well that the Reserves Asset Fund is a unique opportunity, and there's a desire here that this probably fits within scope of that, to say this is something that's outside of the normal that we think is worth investing in. And I honestly believe that a project like this should be able to attract IBL money too. And if we put a good case together and get our MPs on board, then we should, if it's no longer 1.2 million, it's going to be $3 million, then I think we've got a case for it.
We can answer that. We've tested that, and they've given us some direction that wouldn't fit the criteria. You might have a view on that.
I've got a very strong view. I've got a very strong view.
Yeah.
While they will tell you that, it is completely politically driven where the IBL goes, and we put the
so that's a discussion.
And we could get the money.
That's probably a discussion for you to take forward,
Yeah.
rather than direct it to us. We can't determine that.
Yeah.
There's been some discussion about how many designs we might like to look at and work things up. All of that costs, right? All the scope. So I think we need to be really careful and if we're going to do a bit of engagement, I think we do need to.
I guess
a bit
that's
of engagement then. And then come up with one probably option that fits what people want, or plus the basic, and understand the costing of that, but this is slightly different because it's School Heights Fund, I believe, so it's a little bit different to the normal council.
I guess this design here is a little bit reflective of the budget that the State Department has available. If you want us to go away and do a bit more of I'm going to use the word signature, I don't know if that's the right word, something a bit more telling for the site. Iconic, whatever you want to call it. We can do that. But then that might have a...
Do you think that we need to come up with a budget, and then would that be more helpful?
That would do it that way, but
just to paint a context, right? Once I saw the documents that Councillor Smith sent through, I did a bit of work on just understanding the four options that were provided through that report, just to give us a bit of context on where the cost really excels. And if you look at the drawings that were provided, the barrier sits quite where the water turns from light blue to dark blue. That's a restricting factor, and that's where cost really goes out. So if you're looking at length, you're probably at a kind of a maximum there before it really takes off. The design in terms of
accurate, because that's not depth, that's vegetation, that's weed. But the reason it changes colour is not because it suddenly gets deep there, it's because it suddenly gets weedy.
But I guess
the weed
it's
is
the
in
point
the
about
shallow.
scale.
The weed is in the shallow.
But anyway, I mean, that's a different decision. We don't understand, we don't have those constraints that are set out, but
It's definitely deep.
Yeah, I was looking at the context of the size, obviously between the traditional, as it's called, and then the talking being about 80 square meters bigger. You're looking at between 35 to 55,000 in terms of the linear meter cost for a walk of a field structure and a field structure hard face. which is
Right.
planks. So that's just kind of the context in terms of where the cost would escalate in terms of size.
You can just go down that concept though.
Yeah, but so the talkie is a quite a practical solution for that. And if the direction is that, yes, this is where we're looking into the cultural narrative of it, but obviously there is an interface with the boating community and how that is interfacing with how we want this to be used. Obviously, we're talking about I just wanted to use it as some jump out of and where the primary use comes, looking at the context of Roy's Bay and how we handle boating, commercial operators and the labour fund, how that all ties into this context. And there is obviously conversation that's the feedback you're looking from here, which all adds to the elements of difficulty in design, construction, horizontal loading. So, value conversations.
Kelly?
I just,
Go on that functional point, whether or not you could, one of your questions, do we need to accommodate boats or not? And I've had some feedback from a commercial operator that there isn't a need to build to commercial standards for the jetty because commercial boating would not use it. Particularly because the season's so short, and that's one aspect, but that's just a wee bit of data that I collected when I was trying to get my head around it. And what, functionally, it does seem quite important, and maybe that has an impact on cost, the height and but how that all works. But from what I understand, not being an expert, it sounds like that is possibly something we don't need to accommodate, at least the commercial boating, someone pulling up in a kayak or what have you. It's definitely, I would have thought it's a relatively easy thing to accommodate.
So again, that's a useful piece of direction, whether we want to build it for commercial or more so that's a good piece of direction we need, and so that'll kind of that might influence the cost.
From my perspective, this is for about swimmers, and if you want swimmers, you probably shouldn't have boaters coming in and out because it creates a lot of unsafety. So in the same way with pedestrianised plazas for people rather than for commercial businesses or boats.
Because there are other spaces for them already.
Totally.
It's good.
I suppose just to put that in context though, I think there is a case you could easily have boats on one side and swimmers on the other. I don't think that's a problem. But the reason it's not very well used for boats is because it's not a very good level, because it's a fixed height structure. It doesn't float. So, if you had a floating jetty that, with a ramp down to it on one side of it, on the side, which totally. But the fair question as to whether that's the right place. But I've got no doubt that we've got a jetty at Bob's Cove and that we've got to fix up as well. For the life of me, I can't figure out how it's useful for anybody for getting on and off boats, because it's about 12 feet in the air and it's not, the water's not deep enough and a whole bunch of various things. So, I think we've got to at least investigate that.
We've got another couple of items. Can I just bring to help have clarity for these guys when they go back and rethink things? Have we got agreement that we would like the new jetty to be aligned with Howick Street rather than offset where it is at the moment?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one thing that alignment is that alignment.
Yeah.
The second thing is that I think there is clarity between having an understanding that the structure is more than just a functional jetty.
Yeah, we've got that.
I think we need to, if you'd like us to go back through, if it's going to be driven by use case and there is some conflicting use cases, or there is some use cases where the cost would be a lot more, then I think that might be a next stage that we go through, next gate that we go through, and we make the call and saying, is it for commercial operators? So I think you've been given a clear direction that that's unlikely to be the case. If it's boating versus people, if those sorts of things are key things, then maybe we can be quite functional to bring that back to us, because if that then sends a different path. Are you looking at the okay, Steph? You know what I'm saying? Just a little bit, rather than you guys going away and doing a whole other piece of work and then coming back and us saying, wow, we didn't really need that aspect.
Just in terms of guidance, I wonder whether the height of the jetty is another piece I think we can give guidance on today. And as I said, I think that it's very clear to me that the current jetty is too low because it's inundated too regularly.
Yep.
But the boardwalk that we built on stage 3 actually has basically nailed the optimal height for the deck level of the new jetty. So whatever the base level of that boardwalk is, I think is the right number for the deck level of the jetty.
What else have we agreed on, or do you
Well,
think would be useful?
My intuition tells me it'd be really cool to go to Manawhinu and be like, we have this idea and concept, is it something, because we want to reflect some of the, identity into the heart of the lake and see how they feel about it and whether or not they're on top of it. I don't know if that's something people are interested in, but when I've gone to them and with ideas have been really helpful and constructive. And
Yeah, so I can probably comment on that because we meet with them monthly and we just talk about new projects coming up and we discuss this. And at the time we were like, it's quite constrained, but we thought the direction was it was constrained. So now that there is a more wider opportunity and they're really keen to be involved and partner with opportunities on the lake. So that could be, we can have a conversation with them, see if they can take it back. And
yeah,
it
feels like a great platform to go. Like, it's actually so cool.
Is there anything else we could help decide?
Yes.
Give you.
I've got one point. Obviously, the current jetty finishes halfway up the beach, right? So that gives free flow for, the tying this jetty back into the walkway, obviously elevating it. It's going to create going to be relatively higher than what it is now. How we transition between getting people from one side of the jetty to the other. Obviously, the current drawing is displayed as 2 ramps coming off the side. Where does the direction lie from the board in terms of how we get people from one side of the jetty to the other in terms of that context?
I can do, but
Look, as I said, I think first thing we need to determine the level because that determines the point at which it intersects the beach and how it ramps down. I mean, I think that there's obvious need to have an appropriate feed in from the path to but as to coming up the sides, I think you can have steps or whatever, and you might be able to have. You might actually have to have tiered steps that provide seating for people to have picnic, to eat an ice cream on or something like that as well at the beach level. So there's some opportunities there. I did highlight to Ken that I think we've just got to be really mindful that with the path coming through and this coming through the middle, that we've got to think about the conflict point there, and having a 3 metre path, meaning another 3 metre path is clearly going to create a conflict point. So you need to fatten that out somehow to provide space for people to get past each other there.
So I guess that's when I mentioned right at the beginning, I talked about creep. That's a good example of how these things start. So I'm not saying we don't do that. I think we do that, but that's just an example.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, one of the reasons, because we were all talking about what's going to be useful, given that we've got like very little funds and we want to really reflect the cost of living and not do this as not put over unnecessary burden, is that the whole the intention of the fund is to try and create these really like visionary things. And I know it seems like on the stage 6 and the other stuff, there's small interventions. It's fine, but whatever. This feels like a real visionary aspect. So if it's there and we can't fund it today, I think I'd rather do it right and see the proper thing being built there for the next 100 years than just do it to replace the one that's there. That's I guess part of the reason why that is fixed up.
Bearing in mind that we're free to keep maintenance and renewals on the existing ones, so it remains safe until the next one's built. So
it doesn't need to be part of the wider stage 4 design, so that it is incorporated in terms of that aspect. And that's what we're looking to do at the same time. But actually, instead of having a separate project, as Nikki was saying earlier, the design is one, so that you can look at those conflicts.
No, I disagree because we've been through this over a number of years.
Yeah.
The idea is that it is a seamless pathway from Howick Street coming down across Ardmore, across the little paths that we've got there, across the stage 4 path into the jetty. Now, I think that's the design principle. Then there's a whole lot of technical sort of things that comes in and goes, well, you've got to meet a drop there. Hey, are you going to ramp it? Are you going to step it or whatever? But I think the whole idea is that you can stand up at overplus, look straight down and go to that. And we are using our experience from many years that we have decided rather than going to do a holistic, this is what stage 4 is looking like, we are going to do it in 3 distinct parts. Okay. One was the jetty, second was a pathway, third was then how we're going to tie it now. That was decided over a long time because we have been through the 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 part of Wānaka things where we know that as a community, it's very difficult for us to look at things holistically and decide. That's when we took those core elements out of it and say, let's deliver them.
Timing and cost.
And the costing is like, oh, yeah. So I think we can do that. I think we can, we know that the jetty, we want people to get up to Howard Street. That's exciting people. We know that there will be a pathway that people will come to that jetty either down Howard Street along the pathway. Well, I think we can work on, I think we can work there. I don't think it's that confident.
Could you, yeah, please don't speak for me. I mean, we as we, and I don't think anything has been decided. I would much prefer if you could just say, I believe, I think, because
Well, the previous
The
board.
previous board.
Just like the
Previous
the we
community
around the
board.
table, you know, there are different.
No, we was in a community board that was before us and will go after us.
I mean, this is a long history. Like there's master plans back from 2008 to 2015,
Would you recommend
2019.
to break it into pieces?
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's how you eat an elephant, right?
No, just was there, no, sorry, was there a decision to
Yeah,
split it apart?
Yes, the three decisions were the vegetation, pathway, and the jetty were the three ways there.
I've got it.
Can I ask one thing, with the pathway and is it, have we decided that the pathway and the jetty are going to link, or?
We're wanting to, but the levels will determine that. And then there will be, how will that actually functionally work? But the concept is that we don't want to have the
Yeah.
jetty lake. You have to go
Yeah,
over.
I get that, but they don't, like, I quite like that concept in your presentation. There's like a link way that kind of, it helps mitigate what Quentin was saying. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, we're not
I
exactly.
think the answer to that, we'll go and explore it and
Yeah.
see how practically that's enable it. And the pathway's kind of set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we'll go away and explore that, and we might come back and, like Simon says, it might be completely cost prohibitive because of whatever. And so
Yeah.
I guess
It links. It doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll link,
Fine.
but will it link by a ramp, by a part,
Yeah,
by
Yeah,
steps?
yeah.
Will it? I
That's
don't.
all.
I think that's a technical thing because it will be very much topography based.
I've just got one question.
And then Kathy, and then Stefan to close.
And maybe it's, Bill, I appreciate I've just entered in late to the discussion, but just checking we're clear about the funding. So taking your point about this is the baseline option that has been presented today, form and function. But we're taking that investment as the base investment, which is currently allocated to the jetty replacement. And then also working on the basis that the investment fund will then help to the gap in investment to meet the aspirations of the
No,
community.
it's not.
I think that's the principle. Ken.
So we're all on the same page?
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
I want to be
can I
clear
just
about
say-
the instructions
Can
to
I
start.
clarify that? From what I thought, we're not taking a budget from Ely Point, right? We were going to 100% fund from the fund.
Less the renewals.
Yeah, the renewals, but
Yeah,
we're either
yeah,
taking,
yeah,
we're either taking the renewals from Ely Point, or we were just taking the renewals from
GT.
that jetty.
Well, no,
which
it
was
was
minimal.
yeah, it was renewals from all the.
Well, there was no
GTs.
specific
Well, then you're taking
allocation.
Ely Point's renewals. I didn't really realize that. Did you guys?
I'm just seeking
Yeah,
clarity.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's good,
Because that's what I tried to ask last time, when I was saying it's only a tiny, if we're not taking all of Ely Point's renewals, then it's marginal what the renewal.
Well,
for-
we're still going to try and deliver Ely Point as well.
Well,
So that,
This is the point, so you're taking
it's only
it from.
part, it's only part of that. I mean, I think going back to the thing, I mean, I don't think starting with the budget's the right approach, because I think we need to start with what we're trying to achieve and then work out.
Yeah, but he still
how
wants to
much
know
it's gonna
where the
cost.
budget's coming from.
But well, we've already indicated that the board are prepared to make a substantial investment from Skirvite's funds, which is the backbone
no,
of
I,
the backbone of the project.
But that's still like, that's still confusing the way you're saying it. Are we taking the Ely Point renewals budget, or are we not?
yeah, it's a very.
There
good
isn't an
point.
Ely Points renewals budget. There is a renewals budget of which it was intended to.
So we want to, the
Um,
point is we'd like to retain the
and they'll
Ely
talk
Point.
Well,
renewals
that's what I
budget,
thought.
is what you're saying.
Yeah, so part of the, obviously the renewals budget comes out as a like for like replacement budget to upgrade and retain an asset.
Yeah,
Obviously, the creation of this asset has prompted us to seek where can we find the funding to replace this asset, and that's the allocation that we've seen. If we can, well, we think we can deliver Ely Point below what the budget
right.
is.
So there is that money there.
that is money that is still there for the council to make a decision on in terms of their renewal.
So is this a helpful way of framing it? So if you take, say there's a couple $100,000 to replace a jetty, take that fund of what a like for like would have been, and then whatever's left over to get to what we want to, we use the asset sale reserve fund.
Yeah, I didn't realise that.
Just one other point, David.
Is that not how
No,
you
no, just checking with the chair, because the chair made a good point about the complicator, and you know, we work in that space off. So I'm just checking, because we had shared, Councillor Smith has pointed out, Stefan's reflecting back the previous design. Are we to be, you know, are we clear for staff to go away? Do we need to look at what our procurement settings are and how we obtain work in this space on the balance that you have a pro bono program in front of us? Or,
Yeah.
you know, because we, again, are going to be tested, and we will need to come back and have some sound advice about how we navigate
And you
or cannot navigate that process.
You'll recall when I presented that to you, that was the advice that I asked for, is how do we fit this into procurement, or how do we take this forward, understanding that there are procurement
So we'll
restrictions around it. Yeah,
Thank you.
so that is we need you to advise us on that, yes. Because I'm not saying that we preferentially
Neither are we. We just need to be clear.
anybody, I'm not saying we just need a pathway to say how we're going to progress with this and secure a design. You know,
We did have preliminary checks, but we need to come back with some thorough
So,
advice.
sorry, Quentin, are you asking for a pathway forward to proceed with one of those designs?
no, I'm asking, well,
We are to.
No, I don't think it's not what you're asking. is it? I
no,
don't
it's
think it
not.
is.
I'm saying we need to be able to go, we've got some ideas on the table from that. We need to be able to get from that point to project delivery, and you guys need to come up with a pathway for us to do that, including procurement of design.
Okay. So we've got a little bit of direction on the design. We've got we might have to go away and just do some distilling of that. We've got some questions around budget. We're going to do some clarification of that, even though that's not the purpose today. And there's a bit of a procurement pathway. I'm not quite sure, but I think there's a question. But
There's a question there. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. I'm going to bring it to a close. Stefan, anything else from you since you're joining us? You good? No. Wonderful. Chair.
Last comment, first of all, just on that integration of the different pieces, I feel like the responsibility for that integration thematically lies with us, because we know all these are all pieces that are going to be happening, right? You know, stage 4 pathway, the ones we're talking about and that have been split up. So I think we will not let that. That's always going to be front and center, at least it is for me, as we think about how this proceeds in general. And then specifically, you asked about heights, Stefan, and I assume that you're already thinking about this, but just accessibility. I just reflect on the Moby map, you know, a pilot that was done, for example, you know, so thinking about how you might use some pieces of equipment like that.
Thank you, team. We'll look forward to, Dave, will you let us know when we should expect to sort of have another, just let us know, and I'll circulate to the team, just like, so this doesn't sort of just end up, when's our next gate that we're going to try and get through?
Yeah, we'll have to do some thinking. I'll come back to this one.
Stage 6.
Stage 6. So today we're going to seek direction on the landscape design. So just to add to this, we're not going to look to design today, just look at the elements that would be in or out within the scope that we would provide a landscape architect to then move forward to that concept design before they move to detail if there were elements within that. So I just want to clarify where stage 6 is. So it's at the end of the stage 1 car park, and then just past Stony Creek out where the property boundary is. So there includes a little bit over the creek to the west there.
Just touch on that. Previously, I suggested that an important aspect of this was actually to, you know, how people use the Wānaka tree, how this links into Station Park, which is not very well at the moment. That doesn't link well with Station Park particularly, and it's the way it's used for the Wānaka tree. So I just think the scope of it just needs to be a little bit further west.
Again, this is scope. Do we hit stage 7 where that?
Stage 7.
Is that stage 7, or do we? Because it includes quite a different area and then the pathway again. And it does mean a lot of, it is an increase in scope if we do that, to look at how we can have that flow between the two areas.
It was always intended to be from the bridge to the toilets. We've talked about it before.
So
Is there a stage 7 currently?
No, but there wasn't a stage 6. So
Stage 12.
yeah,
Stage
yeah.
12.
I've got the thing I see about this area is that it's like a transition area, if you like, from the more formal part of the lakefront
Yeah.
through what's at the moment quite a natural sort of area
mhm.
with puddles and all sorts of things, and into a lakefront that's got a shingle path through it. And I think this as a transition from the more formal town part to the all this bit.
The bush.
Yeah.
I can see everyone's really enthusiastic to give in and give some feedback. So maybe get through to the bits that she's looking for feedback from, and then we can do it.
So number 1 was the area, so that's where we're proposing at the moment, and we can look to stage 7. But not today, I'm saying, in a future day. So I just had some background there, which you're all familiar with, so I won't go through that. And then just to remind everyone of the Wānaka lakefront 4 big moves, which was to restore and develop ecology, continuous access, improve land use, and provide a range of facilities. And I just also had a reference here to the reserve management, the important area within the plan. So one of the first elements that we'll just move to today is pathways and accessibility. And so I've just got some pictures here to just jog everyone's memory of the area. So we've got the narrow pathway along the Wānaka Mount Aspiring Road there, which is quite narrow and constrained. Then we've had the upgrade just past to Rotary Playground heading towards town. And then we have a lot of informal pathways, as we see just before Chris, in terms of shingle pathways and desire lines. So what we wanted you to confirm direction on today was that we would look for a landscape architect to look at the best link through the area for that concrete pathway from stage 1, having that same design element right the way through to the bridge. And I don't know whether that's something that you want. Yeah, that's what I think we wanted some direction on.
From the discussion from the previous community board,
Yeah.
is that stage 3 pathway would not, stage 2 pathway of a 3 metre wide concrete, very expensive, was not to continue on. That would be the toilet block, would be where things transitioned to a more lower key,
Yes.
millennium pathway thing. So
And that's what we just wanted confirmation on, and that, yeah.
no one was, well, I'm just phrasing it as, was there any intention? There was no intention to
No.
continue stage 2 pathway 3 metre wide.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
That's clear. And then just other points in here, they're just, I guess, general points in terms of looking at accessibility connections, and that's what we'll get the landscape designer to do in terms of their remit. Safe connections between car parks and parking, and we'll go into that in a minute. Clear, safe entrances in low speed environments, and fit for purpose surfacing treatment will be proposed.
Here's another thing. I don't think the intention was ever to start investing in the car park around it. Well, you're talking about surface. Are you talking surfacing in the car park?
Pathways at the moment. Should we get to car
Oh,
park?
sorry, on my mistake.
So we're
When you
just
talk
pathways.
about
So just
surfacing.
Okay.
Apologies.
just pathways.
I-
Okay.
Yes.
So now's parking. Here we go. So there are 2 parking areas. One really informal with there are lots of rocks around it and stormwater issues currently in that car park. And then the other really busy car park near the water sports facility. So we just want some direction here on retaining the 2 parking areas, no net increase in parking capacity within the full reserve stage 6. Then we want just some direction on, do we leave them informal, or would you like the one closest to the water sports? We have had designs presented previously over the years to seal that and make that more of a formal delineated car park, and then keep that second one closer to town more informal. And so that's sort of where we were heading with that, and wanted to know whether that was a direction or keep them both informal, but understanding that both car parks need to have provision for whether it's camper van and bus parking or how they move through that site.
Oh, I've got views. Quentin?
Well, look, I think the known net increase is a good principle. I would open to how we optimise those car parks as opposed to increase them. Or I just wanted to touch on that calling it a development plan is we've got to be careful with, because what we're not, this isn't a high treatment like, you know, we did with stage 2 or even stage 3 or the future. You know, this is it's really setting up about how this is managed, but with a fairly low footprint. And so, yeah, I just wanted to flag that. But yeah, I think those principles that you highlighted, no net gain, but optimisation and protection of the, you know, management of the car parking is a key consideration.
Kathy was.
Oh, yeah.
Kathy had her hand
No,
up. Yeah.
Clarifying question, the area, I'm looking at that photo with the boulders in pink, that whole area that I know has been specifically boulderized and to prevent car parking in there. I sometimes get the question from people that, you know, or comment actually, you know, that's land that is allowed to have parking on it. Why aren't we using it for parking? I don't have a good answer to that. Can you just tell me what, yeah.
I can answer that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clarification, and then I want to actually functionally talk about, well, what is the best use of that land?
So the short answer is it's tied directly to the environment court decision on the water sports facility. So the layout of that car park is, and the landscape plan is determined by the environment court outcome. So no, it's not set aside. It's not currently available for car park outside the areas that are now dropped off. It's not. It was never a car park, and it's
Right.
and
Okay, cool.
it's
That's helpful to know. So that's legally.
legally tied to. So the only way we could change that is by going to the environment court and seeking a variation to the landscape plan. Well, we're going through the RMA and seeking variations. Now that's their consent, not our consent. So there's weird stuff going on there. But
So it's not a short-term fix for that. We can't short-term fix it.
No, and
six
do we-
development.
do we necessarily, we have to also say, will we necessarily want to just increase, you know, paved paradise and all that stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just without going too far down a different direction, I think we need to activate that area and put picnic tables in it.
The reserve land and the use of that land and use for different people. We can put car parking everywhere and we could turn the whole, but that's not what we're looking here. We're looking to protect the reserve and looking at areas.
Need another toilet.
Yeah. So just to close off that conversation about that land itself, from my perspective, I mean, it feels like no man's land. I guess it's sort of in between them. So thank you. That was really helpful. So in between the make it all car parking and make it all really reserve activated, you know, at the moment, it would be great to see more activation. That's actually how we use the land, is my sense.
You mean like facilities and seats
Just
and
like
stuff like that?
really simple, just very.
You're
low-key.
talking car parking when you're talking about activation.
No, I'm talking about if that is indeed an area that's meant to be reserved, we want people to be recreating in, then what can we do to enable that? Or make it clear that that's, that it is just open land, that that's what we want people to do, because at the moment, people don't use it at all. It's just, yeah, people see it as, rightly or wrongly, people see it as, oh, I wish I could. Anyway, and then I guess the other, so you've indicated that that we have to have camper van parking and tour bus parking in that current car park as well. You said in both car parks, the one that is by the new toilets.
I'm not getting direction on
Okay.
that.
No, we don't have to do
No, we don't have to.
So my view would be no, I
It's a
don't
lot
want
of buses use
I
that.
would prefer, it would be really nice not to have camper vans or tour buses in that car park. That would be my preference. I
goes
don't
on
know how. I'm
Park up.
just saying,
No, let's park in Manus
looking
Line
for
Road.
direction of preferences, that would be mine.
There's ample parking.
And yeah, because obviously that is, functionally speaking, we all have to admit that area is a mess. It's difficult, it's hard to deal with, so it would be fantastic to find some solutions to that.
To that point, could we put a couple of, I don't even know if I should be suggesting this, but bus parks and a crossing, you know, it was always, when I used to drive past there in summer, it was really dodgy, like there were people coming out from camper vans and crossing the road, you know,
And we're not looking at design today, so I'll just say, can we bring it back to
Back to some
just
direction?
elements? Yeah,
oh, yes,
Yeah.
it's just a case of where do we then put the buses if they're not going in there. So can we have a think about that at a high level, and then what that might mean for if they're on the other side of the road for safe crossings across that road. Just noting it was raised by residents about how unsafe it is.
Another comment with regards to the buses is the difference between a bus park and a bus stop. Bus stop somewhere where people get on and off the bus and the bus moves, which I don't have a problem with the bus going in there, parking by the toilets, and then going and parking in the
Stopping by the toilets.
sorry, letting everyone off, and then going and parking in the showground or something, and then waiting for them to come back and taking their photos of the body of the tree. When I was down there, but hour after hour talking about the devil sculpture that's in there, I watched the buses come and go, and there were some people that had their phone in front of their face as they went down the stairs of the bus all the way to Wānaka, click, click, back into the toilet, not back on the bus. And that entire time, you could have up to half a dozen buses sitting in that car park. And I think you need to make it very clear that it's a drop-off only for buses, and they can go and park on the other side of the main road, or they can go into something like the showgrounds and then wait for whoever.
So that's a management thing, so we can stress that.
Yeah, but they have tour leaders that can, bring the bus in.
Yeah, what we're really looking is a bit of direction to
Yeah,
this.
no, I'm just saying in terms of the parking side of things, I don't think we should make any allowance for any permanent buses, and camper vans preferably no either. They take up just that much more room and they're longer, and I think that they can also park.
So last time we did the stage 6 intervention and we put the bridge across and stuff like that, and what blew the budget out of the water was when we started talking about car parking and sealing. That's when we did the rocks around there, and I think it's working a lot better than what it is. We remediated that piece of ground, and credit to you guys that said it couldn't be grassed. It looks amazing there. But every time we then sort of said, let's do lines and signs and let's do surfacing and stuff like that, suddenly we talk about scope creep, that just blew it out. And that's why we scaled it all the way back down and do less fractional side of things. And I am a little bit concerned with this. Was meant to be stage 6, was meant to be a lighter touch sort of thing. It just worries me when we talk about surfacing, when we talk about signage and stuff like that. I personally don't think that is the priority. When we talk about access and pathways, that seemed to be the way. How do we join this up better? Seemed to be, if there was only one thing we would do, that would sort of make sense. I know we can do more than one. Just conscious once we get into that car park area, you know what happened, the cost is when.
I agree with you, Simon, and that's what we're just sort of seeking a bit of clarity with it. I think that position's still the same.
I don't get the sense that that's a priority, and if we are dealing with a limited amount of funds for stage 6, let's wait till we get through. I would say that we would sequence it down, and if we can get something in there, you can say, well, this is what you could do within this budget. Otherwise, we're putting a lot of time and effort into something that I think that's financially it's probably not going to be within the scope of.
Okay.
That's great. That's great. That's exactly.
Then move through to the next one. Art and memorials. So just a review of existing memorials. There's 2 to 3 memorial sets, and there's the wagon wheels. So we have spoken to the wagon wheels because they're kind of associated with the show and a rural, connected to rural. So therefore we were like, do we want to retain or remove? So just a bit of background for the other stages. All memorials were removed off the lakefront to make allowance for a clear area, and we don't really allow them in those high profile locations at the moment unless it's a civil occasion or dignitary. So just wanted some guidance on that. We don't have a policy around it, but whether you're just happy to, because especially if we're looking at furniture and changing furniture and having it all linked in, it's looking at whether we keep the memorials or
I'll just leave it.
I don't think there's a desire to. I don't think that
this is what we just want direction.
I don't think that's the scope.
Yep.
I don't think that's within the scope at the moment.
Yeah, that's great.
We want to try and standardise some of the furniture, but I don't think remove stuff.
And we'll come to furniture. This was just a question on memorials of what had happened in previous stages, and we just wanted to understand direction.
Big triangle.
So that's art. Then there's the art side of it. So it's like, do you want more the designer to allow for more art within the space, or do you for future artworks and opportunities working with iwi as well?
Yeah, that's what.
Yes. And that particular area, where the typical sculpture is, there's been conversations with the Kakano and the other guy, and just to keep doing what's happened over a period of time. Coming back over this side of the bridge, I don't think there's a lot of room really, and there's still plenty of space along the lakefront.
Take a whole of lakefront view to the heart.
And it's something where the Arts Trust is putting together as a strategic plan and having a goal of X number of new installations here and over the hill on an annual basis, and we haven't quite decided what that would be, but I'm guessing it might be one here and one there. So there'll be something.
Yeah, so
Not a priority.
Okay. Materials and spatial definition in terms of at the moment, as we know, there's a lot of rocks, there's different fencing, bollards, posts, etc. So just looking at how we're using those features. So I guess this one really isn't direction, but just saying that we will get the landscape architect to have a look at these factors within the design, and maybe there will be some recommendations for change in terms of how the area looks and feels. I was just saying, if you look at stage 3 along above the boardwalk as you're heading out to the marina there, you know, the rocks are actually placed properly and part of the landscape rather than just a lot of rocks. So just getting some direction that we will look at this. And I know they have a use in the space.
So the one observation around the rocks is I think they're working down at the water sports facility. It's been really effective, the rocks placed around there, because there's been no transgression. We do know that when we had the MP show, that the rocks placed by the wagon wheel were actually effective, so the gaps were too big. So I think I would encourage you to think that if they are there for that purpose, and that purpose is when it's really like getting breached, we do need to say, well, we need to add a couple more. What I'm sort of saying is
I think it's how they are in the landscape rather than and using barriers, but what barriers to look at preventing.
No.
They're two separate things. So to do with the rocks, I know what you're saying about aesthetics and spatial. That if they come back and say we suggest it's post and chain all the way around there, and that's going to look better, then I think we look at a community board and say, okay, what's the cost of that? What's the aesthetics? It makes sense to do that. I think it's the experts that come back and say you should replace it.
Yeah, I'm not certainly not fixed on one tool or the other. It's just a matter of.
But David did say about the rocks, the car parking issue. So what I was saying about the rocks and the car parking was they're not separate thing. We need to fix the gap in the rocks so they can.
I agree with you, Simon. I actually was down there looking at exactly that.
Play and recreation, understanding we've got the Rotary Playground, but looking at whether you want to look for other opportunities for natural play, because this comes up quite regularly when we talk to the community within that space, whether or not there is an opportunity for natural play in the future.
Well, it is, or you know, the beach is fundamentally natural play, but I think that I don't think we need any more formal opportunities in there.
I'm not sure we would need to curate it.
No. Natural play.
You know, if they want to,
This is
it's orchestrated.
previous stages.
Orchestrated natural play.
Plant trees, and that's great. And
You
paddle in the creek.
That's great. We've got everything. That's
We've touched on this already. Looking through the site, there's a range of furniture and facilities, all sorts of ages and styles. So looking at whether or not some of the design elements from the previous stages then flow through, so that you've just got that continuous feel. Or are you looking for a new look and feel here, or are you happy with existing? So it's sort of.
I like the idea of flowing through.
Thank you.
I get overwhelmingly positive feedback on what has happened, in that middle stretch. So I think it'd be great to just follow that.
And the two things that stand out: picnic tables are really popular, and those sun benches are actually really popular. And so that's cool. The other thing that a crossing of the Stone Street culvert, a new crossing of the Stone.
it's coming up.
So that was furniture. So we've got that. Thank you. Ecology and trees. So we're just saying, there's a range of areas where with one of the 4 big moves, we can enhance native ecology. And then it's looking at where there's exotics, having that replacement and over time. So I guess this is just more of a comment that you've got different feels through that stage in terms of where you transition into stage from stage 1. We've got eucalypts and quite mature trees. So looking at a succession plan of some type in there, and there is already a succession plan for some of the poplars, and then looking at opportunities for enhancing the ecology, and this is just what you were talking about, Ian Quinton, in terms of removing the culvert and looking at a small bridge, because this is all part of the blue-green network, and being able to daylight this more and looking at how we can enhance the stormwater area within.
So
I think, I was just going to say, one of the reasons you get that design line issue is because, you know, after you cross the culvert, you get the skinny track, and then people go back to the beach and stuff, is because there isn't a real
Defined.
Yeah, so, you know, notwithstanding we don't want a cement path all the way along, we do want the path from from McDougall Street better aligned along the top of that bank and crossing the new bridge and heading further along and linking up with the upgraded.
I thought this was a key part of the stage 6
Mhm.
because it is a congestion point, it's a conflict point. It's crying out for slightly more formalisation there. And it's actually quite dangerous because it's quite narrow, and there's lots of things that I think that could be, and whether a bridge is the answer, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think just funneling people into that very narrow area and then expecting them to sort of go somewhere else when it comes out is a key piece of infrastructure investment, I think, that's needed on that.
Love to focus on the blue-green network.
And then the next sort of comments are just that we will make sure this is all part of it and give weight in terms of how within the design. So I guess this slide speaks to itself in terms of, you know, looking at the streams and
just going back to your planting thing. I mean, once again, I don't think there's a wholesale change needed here, because the oaks are amazing, the poplars are amazing. They all provide a unique context, and obviously people go there specifically to see the poplars, you know, and stuff. So there might be more localized planting around the Stone Street Creek, for instance, or, you know, some gardening, but overall, structurally, it's sort of there. You're acknowledging the existing structure and enhancing it and succeeding it, you know.
And just to move through quickly, also working with iwi in terms of partnering with them through the full design from the beginning to the end, and looking at opportunities, and then wayfinding, which is something that we're still working on through all stages there. So just comment on that. And then another point that we will just make sure is addressed is where the connectivity lies, in looking at resilience and where those pathways are, because it does interconnect with the lake. And
That's the biggest challenge I think you've got designing that, because that desire line is always to stay close to the lake, okay? But that's where we know that that's prone to flooding and it will cause degradation. The other side is to put it there, it becomes a non-desire line, so we don't serve the purpose, so people end up going the route that they want to, and then we've got all that conflict with, you'd have to formalise where the parking. So I think if the whole area that is that between the sort of toilet block and the wagon wheel, that stretch is the most complex. We know that there's still more problems when it's pools and puddles in there. It needs some attention. So I don't have the answer, but I'm just saying that routing the path inland, it might seem like topography wise, it's the easiest way to go, but I just think we've got to look at desire lines. We've got to make sure that this makes sense for the users that are using it, whether they're walking or they're biking or they're running or whatever, and just make sure we keep that in balance.
I totally agree.
Narrow path and wider path, I find that cyclists who are wanting to get through.
Use the narrow.
And just, can we have two paths?
Well, it's
Got to. Well, no, in terms of what, you know, the cyclists will take the easiest route, and the walkers will ultimately gravitate towards the.
well, that's what design thing. We haven't on the rest of the pathway is pretty uniform that everyone shares, but
I mean, you know, the question is, you've got a footpath near the road, you've got we're going to have a path along the top of the beach, effectively. So why do you need a third one?
Just to get the cyclists to
So
the space they want.
It's about designing, well, we've got it, but they're going to have a shared path and a footpath. But anyway, it's just a matter of
It's just that they don't
design.
down.
It's just a matter of being intentional about that, about what you're intending people to do, because at the moment it's confusing.
We just missed facilities, so we were proposing an additional toilet facility to be placed somewhere within the design. Just want to make sure that everyone agrees with that, because of the high demand at the water sports with that one foot there.
So we will need to factor that in.
That
somewhere.
in where that goes, that will be part of the design, but just want a direction that you agree with that.
But, yeah, I mean, I agree with them in principle. The hard thing is that we know that they will be used by tourists, and so it's like the community's paying toilets for other people to take photos of the tree.
I guess we're just focusing on the direction at the moment.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Like that's what I'm saying. It feels like something we can get some.
Yeah, look, we'll address the user pay things at another conversation time. And there's a whole range of this will go down rabbit hole, but I think what we're hearing is you.
We know that it's needed.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't overspeak it.
And then this links into Matt's conversation. I guess just to be understand there's the existing activity of the Water Sports Trust, but consideration, do we want to allow other commercial leases or licenses here in the future? And just thinking about events or community use. So these are just things to think about when the designer is looking at the space. And I think this will link in to Matt, so we'll tag in there.
I'm very my thoughts from Glenwalkie, because I haven't spent as much time on this lakefront, but it was always nice to have an area that tourists gravitated towards. We get a fancy jetty, that's what will happen. And then having an area where it's just more low key, where tourists can run away, locals can run away from the tourists if they need to. So maybe not drawing tourists into the space, and whether it be by design or by well, yes, sorry.
What's the fault for that?
Well, and it's in between where it's not, you know, I just think it's nice for there to be some places we don't have to get in the car and drive to peace.
Yeah, so I guess that's what we're asking. So maybe not answer that today, but give it some thought when we come back to the design, you know, whether if you're still going to stay with that direction or you basically want to make more and more available. So just think about it. Don't respond to it.
You've got a point you need to catch, so.
Yeah, thank you very much, because it was very clear now, and we can take that away.
So when do you think we'll hear back from you again?
In the next, we can look at next steps, can't we?
Yeah, we'll
we can
just have
match
to
it
take
up.
a bit
Yeah?
of that feedback.
So just on both of those, it'd be good too. These are really, the jetty and stage 6 are really important parts. It's already, so just circle back around, let us know. Keep the team abreast, like when we next have a workshop, what's the next step?
To be honest, Simon, we'd like to keep things progressing. Okay, keep some momentum going on it. We might not be well prepared in the conversation, but we want to keep the conversation going. So probably come back to you sooner than later.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
We
Appreciate it all. Thank you. Awesome.
We got
Need to go like that.
Green Pavlova to the Parks Conference. I'm Hamilton.
Plans at 2:25, so
enjoy.
I'm gonna shoot to the.
You did it, Kate.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
Nikki's got commitment over.
We're going to fill the room out just to.
So last item on the agenda is future of the Wānaka lakefront license holders. Roger, Matt, good to see you guys.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully this is going to work. It is. Yeah. I'm Matt Judd. I think I know all of you reasonably well, or have met you on occasions, and I've got Roger Davidson with me, our property director. And we're here to bring a workshop item on the future of the Wānaka lakefront license holders. It ties in with the previous two items that we've just been discussing, and it's an opportune time to be discussing this. We have two pending license expiry and a pending license renewal. So that's why we thought it was appropriate to bring this item for discussion today. Here's a photo of the two license holders, which is Haida Wānaka and Lakeland Wānaka, located on Wānaka's waterfront. There's the two license holders. So that's Paddle's location, which is at the end of the car park within stage 4. Lakeland is between the car park and the lakefront on stage 4. Here are the maps, which have the red squares are their identified license areas. And just to clarify, a license gives them the right to use that space. It doesn't give them the right to have any permanent structures or anything. They're a right to occupy. So it's a license versus a lease. This is a license that we have. So it's for a defined physical location, not long-term permanent occupation. And another note is that QLDC does receive revenue from these, and I circulated an email this morning that you may have all received just commercially sensitive information about the revenue that they receive, but that is a factor in providing direction today from this workshop. So we've outlined 4 different options for the future of these lakefront license holders. One is the status quo. We're expecting there to be significant change in this area in the future, and there has been significant change since they started operating. I think Lakeland is in their 3rd sort of space. They were in the log cabin before what they are now, and I think there was even a previous structure before the log cabin. So we'll go through each of these, but in brief, we've got status quo, we've got downsize, a new location, which is where Brianna was referring to, potentially stage 6, and then no lakefront commercial licenses this option. So status quo, some points that we've made is in terms of that lakefront activities do provide points of interest. They do provide activities for people to undertake on that lakefront, which are reasonably busy at times. I think both of them generally only operate during the summer season. Possible negative effects are that they are quite prominent on the lakefront. They are noticeable to businesses, noticeable to the public, and do create a barrier between the town and the lakefront, which is what we have been discussing today as well. And there may be conflict with future development on the lakefront. So depending on the outcome of some of these conversations, we've had some clear direction in terms of where that jetty is to be located. So it's just how we want to locate these businesses if they stay within stage 4. So one is status quo. Number 2 is to reduce the size of the licensors or potentially reduce the infrastructure that they have on the reserves associated with them. So Cattle Queenstown, I put here as an example, they occupy a pretty similar sized area on Queenstown's main waterfront, but they're not permitted any vehicles within their license area. So they come in the morning, drop off their equipment, have their equipment on the lakefront, remove the vehicles, then at the end of the day, they come and pick that back up. This is clearly inconvenient for the license operator and is a lot more difficult to use.
If it's okay, just a clarification question. So for our license holders here, I understand that they do similarly, but when you talk about a vehicle, right, does that include the trailer?
It does include the trailer.
Yeah, they've got, so our license holders have one step improved for Queenstown, in other words, like, because they do take them in and take them away every day, but at least they've got the trailer there with the equipment. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just to add to that, and that's a good point. So Paddle Wānaka, they have, their resource consent permits them to have up to 2 vehicles and 2 trailers, 1 vehicle and 3 trailers within their license area. So they can have up to 4 pieces of equipment within their license area. Lakeland Wānaka is their vehicle and their main big trailer.
Yeah.
And I think they're allowed another trailer to come and drop stuff off during the day if they need it, but not to stay on site. So it just gives an idea of the scale. So option 2 is a potential for downsize. Option 3 is looking at alternative locations. And I know Brianna has just disappeared, but Brianna gave me some direction that stage 1 and 2 have been identified as not being appropriate for lakefront commercial activities, which leaves stage 4 and stage 6. So stage 6, where
Stage 5.
Why not stage 2?
stage 5.
No,
Stage
1 and 2. 1 and 2 are not appropriate, Brianna said. But 1 at stage 5.
Sure. Stage 5 is already a busy, congested area, and so adding commercial activities in there.
Well, that's different. That's a different discussion, though.
It's the type of commercial activities. Yeah, I mean, there was always envisaged that more at the commercial, and in fact, the reason we built the second floating jetty at the marina more recently was because of pressure from commercial operators, ultimately because of the limits on 147. So, you know, the things like the taxi and the tour companies running boats up to Mawahū and things like that, I think there has previously been a direction that they would encourage those to be more at the marina. As to whether you could operate a kayak flyer out of there is a different question, but
yeah, I was just going to say, I know that the loading and offloading of boats is more suited to the marina, but the beachfront activities, I also think that from an operator point of view, they are trying to be in a location where there's high pedestrian traffic, and I don't think stage 5 would potentially meet their location. So,
and I think it's important to note that there was specific provision made for them in lakefront management plan in policy. Because, you know, those lake associated activities, you know, naturally occur there. You wouldn't want a restaurant or a series of food carts there necessarily, but kayak hire is clearly associated with.
You've got to be careful. We've got two very distinct, even though owned by the same owner, but two very distinct operations. One is the hiring of paddle boards and kayaks, and one is organising motorboat.
No, well, they both hire kayaks and paddle boards and paddle wheels and things, you know, the water bikes and things. So, I mean, that's the interesting, and that's an interesting point I think we need to discuss. So they also operate jet ski tours and jet boats and things from the other side. Now, I think it's slightly unusual that we've now got one operator operating two kayak sites on the lakefront. And that's the discussion I think we should have, is should we consolidate the kayak hire into one location?
So do you want to go to option 4?
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, so stage 5 is possible, even though it hasn't been envisaged that there's nothing preventing that.
Yeah, apart from congestion
Well,
in terms of parking and other activities.
Yeah, launching.
Okay.
And why not stage 2? I understand that Brianna advised it's not appropriate, but for what reason?
My understanding is that stage 2 was not identified as
You can't drive on.
space. Yeah, there is no access beyond the formed car parking.
So there was an oddity in that there's at the end of that car park on the town side, there was a spot that, you know, hypothetically could accommodate a coffee cart or something, but that's not something that we've, you know, that's obviously people have been keen on.
So we're not going to need another coffee cart.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's more about, like, I'm thinking about the existing, I suppose.
Okay, let's come back. I mean, if you want to test it, let's keep testing. Option 4 is to can the whole thing.
There's no commercial licenses. So this would, if there were no licenses, that connection with the water would be maintained, but then you'd be removing those attraction points and activities on the lakefront. So I think you've kind of addressed that a wee bit in terms of saying there was always that other balance for road. It's an intended activity, just making sure that they're still in the appropriate location and the appetite's here from there.
And the thinking, and just to put some context, the thinking previously was we didn't know the answer where they would be long term because we haven't done the design of stage 4. And so you would intentionally design a place in stage 4 that you wanted them to be. And until that time, they were holding, you know, just, you know, where they were because because there was nothing else to fall back on. So whatever decision you make, you need to accommodate that flexibility to move them. Should you design, you know, the stage 4 design result in that. But the jetty's a really interesting one because clearly Lakeland are where they are because the jetty and the log cabin were there. Now we moved, well, the log cabin's long gone, the jetty will, you know, could be gone, but does that still make that location make sense? And, you know, as I said, that you then run into that question. Organically, there were two operators that sort of, one with very historic use, the other has actually changed its use quite significantly over time and offered more kayaks and more other things. So you go, but they're now operated by the same person, which is a strange outcome.
Okay. We don't have an option 5, do we?
Yeah, option 5.
Okay.
I'll go back to the summary page. One more thing to consider is decisions like this, although we're talking about our reserve license, there's resource consents which are at play here as well. And so resource consents are normally for a set period of time. Paddle Wānaka has a resource consent that expires in 2027. Lakeland Wānaka have a resource consent that expires in 2030. So moving them around and not giving certainty just provides potentially more cost to the operators in terms of having to get resource consent for different locations. So that's just one extra thing that I just wanted to raise, that if we're saying do this, do that, or give them a short period of time here or a short period of time there, it just adds different ways themselves.
There is flexibility in the license to design stage 4.
But not necessarily in the resource consent.
No, that would have to be varied to reflect what the outcome would
I
be.
suppose if they sought a new consent, you might be able to have an A or B option. You know, you can operate this location or this location. It'd be hard to do it with too much uncertainty.
Okay, there's a few variables here. You've got the options. I'm really conscious of how we're going to OIC in 15 minutes. How we're going to, do we want to take any off the table and then start narrowing down, or how are we going to, what are your thoughts, Cody? Why don't we just go around the table to sort of saying which one are we, and we'll see if we're going to aggregate or congregate with a certain one. Cody, which option are you?
My initial thoughts was, looking at stage 6, I could see there being some, people going to the tree. That's an appropriate space, and it's already heavily touristed anyway. You look at the lakefront trailer just blocking the main area of the lakefront. But I also appreciate that revenue source. No one's overly concerned. I'm very sort of like, I could see how stage 6 could work. I wonder if they're interested. But I'm like, if they want to stay there, I'm not like ultimately hugely against it. I just think in general, looking at giving away the reserves to a few commercial businesses to block the lakefront is something to be quite considerate about. And in Queenstown, with the lakefront trading, it's a small thing that turns into a big thing, turns into a big problem if you don't have a good strategy on. So I'm sensitive to that fact. And I don't know if it's, when we build stage 4 that they can move to stage 6 for a while and then relocate. I just want to be like pragmatic. I want to give them certainty. I want to sort of go, yeah, I totally appreciate this is a really passive recreation thing. That's word bomb out in the ether.
Kevin?
Yeah, stage 6 makes me just such a mess down there. The idea of adding to that mess doesn't feel good. I get comments about the fact that it breaks the connection between lake and town currently, and so I think it would be great to find somewhere else for it, which is what brought my attention to stage 2, because I like the idea of spreading out. I mean, we have so much congestion in everywhere except stage 2, pretty much at the moment, and it's not doable, but I like the idea of spreading people out, and a commercial operator would naturally attract some people down that way. Loath to say, get rid of them altogether, but I think to Cody's point, the balance of commercial operation and lakefront reserve is for all time is important to strike right balance. I don't know what that is. I know it's not really wishy-washy. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, status quo seems easiest. But I appreciate the opportunity with the timing and the licenses. I also don't really fully understand the difference between the relationship between the resource consent and the licenses and that timing. So we can ask that question offline. I'm not giving a firm answer. I'm sorry, Simon.
So you don't need to pick up. What are you thinking?
To me, I think the biggest problem is that we haven't done a stage 4. It's not their fault, I don't think. I think, but like lake plans, yeah, it does block it, but I think that's our problem. I think we have the weird non-connection thing. We need to create a space for them to be there. Same with Wānaka, that's awkward, but that's our fault as well because we don't have a proper. So I think if we can go status quo and then we really factor, I mean, it's hard to factor it in because, hey, they might go out of business, they might move, whatever it is. So I don't think you want to give any special, but you got to, yeah, the flow is broken more because we haven't done stage 4.
It's quite a good point though. You're creating an area for a commercial activity. You're not creating it specifically for business.
Yeah.
So,
And I guess maybe you go, we want a commercial activity. Is that also a direction that we are signaling? I don't know.
Let's go to Chris.
Kind of inclined to, it's not broke, don't fix it, but I'd add to that, if Wānaka consent expires soon-ish, then why don't we talk to them about consolidating with Lakeland? And then in 2030, when they come up, we hopefully we've had more conversations with them about, so what do you want to do? Sorry, I mean, how long ago did we talk to Lakeland? About 10, 12 years ago when we were talking with their current license and how long that took and going round and round and round in circles. I mean, if you consider the green trailer versus the log cabin, that's what's there now is it's a beautiful colour. But I think the consolidation of those two, or maybe we should talk about when had a Wānaka's consent that they should move in together and we make some allowance for maybe some slightly more space there or something. And then with the idea of looking at what we do in 2030.
That is key, but that's specific to business operation. Currently, the question is, do you want two locations for commercial activities?
I'm going to come on to you, Chris.
It's not again.
Chris, I'll let you someone
Okay.
see. No, hang on, Quinn, I'm going to go.
I don't think if there's one owner, I don't think they need two premises as such.
True, but what I'm talking about is not specific to our business. It's,
Sure, and I understand that.
it's the effect of having two commercial locations.
So where I'm struggling a little bit with is with someone who's a business owner that has got some legacy there, and suddenly if that's taken away from them, the business falls over. So I have some sympathy for that. On the other side of things, I'm going, well, if just because there's heritage and legacy here, if I want a commercial activity, why don't I get a commercial activity down there as well? And I'm sure there's a number of the coffee carts, ice cream, and stuff like that. So in some ways, I'm sort of going to Jeff and saying, well, what sort of makes you so special other than you've been there the whole time? When I think of stage 2, 3, 4, I think of that as being non-commercial at all. I see that's the difference, and I always felt like we're trying to bring the lake to town or the town to lake, and all the commercial activity is here, and we go over to recreate and to enjoy. And does it need any commercial activity, whether that's someone selling popcorn or someone doing something else? So I'm a little bit betwixt and between, but I'm struggling a little bit to rationalise why there are two individual sites there that have heritage, and if we've got 2, why don't we have 4? Why don't we have 6? And then if we've got 2, why don't we have none? Because we're pretty close to just sort of creating that as a purist and a differentiator, that you come down to our lakefront and it's purely natural and purely scenic and purely you make your own fun there. And if you want a commercial, you move on to the other side of Ardmore Street. Yeah. Again, I'm not answering a question, sympathy for that, but I also think we need to look and go, what's right for the community in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years? Are we setting a precedent by it remaining? Are we not, because it's always been there and we're limiting it to 2? Are we, if we're putting 2 there, what's stopping us going to 4?
I think what I'm picking up from that is what's really challenging is, yes, commercial activity, but it's also to create passive recreational opportunities. So like that's the contrast that we're having to reconcile and go like, well, we want people to use the lake and want people to be able to get out on a kayak or whatever else, and they come from across the road and they're carrying kayaks.
Yeah, sure.
It's just like a so yeah. That's not helpful at all, is it? Or is it?
I can actually answer a couple of those questions, not that they were specific questions, but so the reserve management plan supports commercial recreation activities. So it doesn't support food trucks, or it doesn't support those other sort of commercial activities. It supports commercial recreation activities where appropriate and where the impact and effect does not unreasonably limit the ability of the public to use and enjoy the reserves. So 6 might be too many, but 2 might be appropriate. So there's a non-measurable element within the reserve management plan saying to allow for it, but not too much of it.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that was written that way because they were already there, and it, and
I would say,
I think Mount Island's a classic example where we particularly removed commercial activity from there. But I'm sure if there had been a coffee cart there, we probably would have made an exception because it's always been there. We've been conditioned to thinking that way.
License lease around town. It's a limited period, so we can never offer security of tenure for ever and day. And yes, we want thriving, profitable businesses there, but we can never give security of tenure.
No, absolutely.
Here's what it actually says in the reserve management plan. It says, provide for the continuation and renewal of existing leases and licenses where such uses support objectives of the plan. Consider a limited number of new leases and licenses where uses would support the objectives of the plan. There might be others there, I'm just trying to find them, but permit the granting of a long-term lease. Oh, that's the campground, sorry.
So you're saying we should go back to this foundational document
That's my point, is the policy is the director, and it's both limiting because it's really doesn't encourage a proliferation of them, but it also acknowledges they're existing and they're associated with the use of the lake. And so I think we should go back to that because I think it was a really sound piece of work.
Yes.
And just going on to how we manage this particular situation, I mean, I think going to the stage 2 point, Wānaka was put on the edge of stage 2. It's actually just in stage 2. And it's on the edge of stage 2. So while it wasn't discreetly a permanent solution, it is already accommodated within stage 2. And then, you know, as we said, the context of the other sites changing. I mean, I just don't think about risks. If we ask them to consolidate, what we risk is they'll relocate their big green van from there to the Wānaka site. I think that's a poor outcome because I think we'd get a lot of kickback on that. But yeah, I think we probably need to have a conversation with them about how we consolidate the activities. I sort of suspect that there'll be 2 operations. One will be kayaks and paddle boards, and one will be the other operations they have consent for, and we need to treat those slightly differently.
Which makes me wonder about the difference between passive and motorized recreation.
Yeah.
And you know, if maybe there's, if you think about thematic direction, is it more palatable, feels more palatable to have passive ones in this central part and more palatable to have motorized over in stage 5 away, because that's sort of the way it's already mostly differentiated. So I wonder if that ends up being, I mean, but I also recognize, you know, we can't tell businesses how to operate their business, but we can suggest that it maybe becomes part of the conversation, that difference.
Conscious of time, and we've got a minute left. When does this need to be resolved by?
Well, we haven't had an application from Wānaka yet, but their license expires in 6 months, so we're expecting that, which is why we came at this point in time.
Yep.
The general direction I'm feeling is to sort of continue with the status quo until stage 4 has a development plan, something along that looking like a week.
Yeah, I think so, but it's not a status quo that then just kicks a can down to the road and we've got the same problem to address in 3 or 4 years' time. A consolidation then makes it, you know, a consolidation then does limit the, you know, does it? I'm not sure status quo is exactly right. I think it's status quo with some sense that we're making who our successors not have the same problem that might be rooted with another 4 years of incumbency.
What you do it in 12 months terms.
I understand, but the problem we're still going to address that same problem there. Could you go and explore consolidation? Could you talk to them and go and say, look, there is a little bit of a question as to why there now needs to be under single ownership 2 different sites. Can we work together to see how you could consolidate? Now they might come back and say completely impossible. I say, well, stage 5,
I think there's words in their mouth. They did mention that when the business was purchased, so
that's their risk. But there is policy support for active recreation in the town centre and motorised water sports at the marina site. There's policy direction for that. So you know that is any lease or license is subject to the considering the reserve management plan. We've got a basis to consider that.
We consolidate. That's that specific business. You've still got 2 locations. Are you removing that location?
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's.
Can I just suggest? I feel like you are hearing directionally. You're hearing an appetite to explore what eliminating them could could be like. I think what you're also hearing is quite a lot of desire to accommodate these long-term license holders and business folks. So we're not leaving them in the lurch. So I guess there's somewhere in between there. And it does sound to me like talking to them about, and that stage 5 possibility and the difference between active, passive, and motorized all seem to be factors.
I think we take out the heritage, if you like, or not the heritage, but the background as well, and just go, this is lease site A, this is lease site B, and then you start, rather than referring them to, so then you incorporate those into the development plan for stage 4. You go, okay, we're accommodating lease site A, lease site B. The criteria is their passive recreation, their recreation and water-based activities, they're non-motorized, predominantly non-motorized, they're whatever, and then you look at how to allocate them.
So you mean depersonalizer?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we've got at the moment. And you might come back with some specific questions, Matt, in the meantime. Then I'm hopefully everybody socialise and let's work up towards that 6-month renewal period. Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have, cool. Right, ORC team, we're just going to have a quick break. Can we just have a pit stop for 2 minutes and come back at 25 to?